Okay, welcome pile one. You have chosen the little yellow child. And so basically, what we're going to be covering is first, I'm going to ask, what is going to be the overarching theme of this reading to kind of get a vibe of what's kind of going on with your inner child wound that needs addressed right now. And then I'm going to be pulling some little people to kind of help demonstrate it visually, what's kind of going on. Either it was a dynamic with your parent, with a sibling, it could be pretty much anything. And then I'm going to draw some cards to illustrate a little bit more in detail about what's going on. So, pile one. So, the first thing I'm kind of feeling when it comes to your inner child wound, the first word I thought of was mastery, or the word master. So, um, I'm getting a feeling that there's some kind of power dynamic that played a role in your childhood, either with parents, siblings, some kind of family dynamic where there was a loss of control. So let me see if I can pull up one card to see what would most accurately describe the dynamic. So, let's see here. No, let's see, just one card to describe the dynamic for pile one. Alright, so you received the Two of Wands. So I'm just going to go ahead and check the book here to see kind of how archetype-wise it matches up. So you got invention. So rashness, creative inventiveness, idea that is absolutely brilliant and original, product of a completely free, intelligent, and independent mind. Inventor has little support as no precedent exists for his work. So the dynamic I'm kind of feeling here is this child is naturally a very independent person. And so your inner part dealing with this dynamic of control has a lot to do with your clashing against your own nature being independent. I feel like you either were somebody that had to struggle to either admit your own independence, like being able to prove it to other people, or you were forced into a position where you couldn't be independent, and it caused one swing of either being too independent from other people and trying to push others away whenever you needed help, or it has to do with codependency where you were way too dependent and you didn't trust your own independence and you were reliant on other people and you never learned to really access what you had because of, again, whatever this power dynamic is going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can pull our little people figures to see if I can determine what's going on with this dynamic. So I'm going to pick, this is a mother, and then father. Alright, so let me kind of see what your parent-child dynamic was in your home. So, now again, this is a general reading, so for some of you this might not apply, but others, it should at least generally give you the gist of what was kind of going on here. So, I'm feeling what was going on with pile one? And then, I'm hearing your parents had a tendency to fight. So we've got blue is for mother, and then green is for father. So I'm feeling like your mother wasn't very emotionally available. So it's almost like, let's kind of move these here so it's a little closer. So I feel like you were kind of stuck, don't know if you can see, but I'm trying to move their face to kind of look like that, while there's kind of this dynamic going on right here where the father's very, I have a feeling you had a very controlling father or a parental figure in your life that, or if it wasn't your father, it was a masculine presence that was very controlling, very out of balance. Um, on the flip side, it could be your mother for a couple of you, but really, this is a power dynamic of one parental unit had more power over the other. Now, I feel like the mother in this dynamic wasn't very independent at all. I'm feeling like, oof, I got like this queasiness in my stomach where either, for some of you, she was either abused, either emotionally, sometimes physically, but it's mostly like an emotional power dynamic where she was not able to, she never felt like she could be independent, so she just kind of shut down. So, um, she's sitting because in order for him to remain in charge and standing, she has to be sitting, which is very common for perpetrator-victim kind of dynamics. Um, where, for example, if she was like standing up straight and able to fully be herself, that would knock him down a peg. And when you're in that controlling, unbalanced perpetrator energy, that shows that the dynamic isn't the healthiest. So, yeah, but I have a feeling though your mother genuinely cared about you. Maybe at times, she seemed a little withdrawn and didn't really show you the attention that you necessarily needed, or she wasn't able to do anything about this dynamic. So your father towards you, I have a feeling like in most cases, this parent dynamic wasn't necessarily out of it wasn't like an evil, nefarious thing. Let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit. Yeah. I feel like it wasn't like an evil, nefarious thing, but it was more so this masculine had his own past traumas, and because of that, he did not know how to stand strong on his own without being in this power dynamic. And anything that he did to necessarily either harm you emotionally or physically in this family dynamic, it had a lot to do with his own inability to remain balanced. And so you internalizing this wound puts you in a dynamic where whenever you're seeing someone who is either, standing in a place of authority and you don't know how to defend yourself, you immediately go back into this position where it's like, I can't even look at this person. I'm laying on the floor, I'm helpless, I don't want to look at what's going on behind me because I can hear them, but I can't look because I'm still in helpless child mode. So, definitely when you are taking time to reflect on what's going on with your inner child, definitely think about the dynamic of your parents and how they're trying to think of like the appropriate wording, how their dynamic is affecting you whenever you encounter people, whether I feel specifically for you, Pile 1, relationships, whether you're playing the role of the perpetrator or the victim in this case. You have a tendency to switch back and forth between sometimes you're like your father, which you don't want to admit, and sometimes you're like your mother. And so being able to be honest with yourself and reflect on what are some things about your behaviors that match both of your parents in either of the situation. Taking a step back to look at that would really help you with unwinding some of that wound, so that way you can heal this power dynamic within yourself, so that way you don't pass it on to your kids, or if you don't plan on having kids, pass it on to other people. But definitely you're going to want to take a step back and just kind of reflect, feel those emotions out, and then be able to release them and give them back to your parents. Because you don't want to be harboring someone else's power dynamic within you if it doesn't belong to you. Because, again, I feel like for this connection, or not connection, but I feel like it's a repeating cycle in your family. Maybe not as bad as what some other family dynamics have. However, I think it's kind of something that has been suppressed in your family, and it's not something people talk about or really address. They kind of don't even sometimes see that it's a bad thing, and so that's why this cycle kind of keeps happening in your family. And so you're kind of stuck being the person that wants to heal these things, when a lot of the family's like, well, this is normal, and it's not. So make sure, again, um, to take that honest look within yourself to reflect on those patterns and what they truly look like. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull back out. So we got our little figures here, so we kind of have an idea of what's going on with this inner child wound. And I'm going to go ahead and put the little people over to this side here. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some cards from my internal family systems deck. So essentially what this deck is going to tell me is what are your inner parts that are affected by this inner child wound. So I'm going to go ahead and I had a couple cards come out here, so alright. So let's see. Inner parts that are affected by this inner wound. Anything else? Alright. So we've got 4 cards here. So, oh, look at that. Once again, it's more of that perpetrator-victim dynamic. So, this inner child wound, so essentially what's kind of going on with these cards is these are all different cards that represent your inner feelings. So, for example, in this case, this is the piece of you that obviously is very joyful. It's freeing and being able to live your life to the fullest extent as an adult, you know, and celebrating life and like, look at all the pretty flowers that's going on here. I have a feeling like this inner child wound affects your ability to feel full, complete joy without restrictions. And so being able to heal this wound is really going to bring out the side of you that for some of you, you probably haven't seen in a long time. Others, you see it occasionally, but whenever something triggers that old wound, it causes this piece of you to kind of immediately shut down and makes you feel like that being able to obtain this isn't achievable, which is obviously not the case. However, this is kind of one of the pieces that is majorly impeded by this inner child wound. Another one is this card right here, which the vibe I'm kind of getting from this inner part is it's an inner peace of being able to just relax. I feel like whatever this unhealthy dynamic that was going on in your childhood and your inner child really disrupts your ability to take time to go within yourself, relax, and just kind of exist. I kind of feel like with this dynamic that was going on with this power and control, that if you feel like you're not in control, you're not able to relax. And so this card's kind of a reflection of that piece of you that really just wants to have a break and not have to think about work or not think about, you know, all the traumas that's going on. You just really want to, you know, go outside, as this guy's kind of doing, just like think about fish and nothing else and just be out in nature, which this could also be a sign that maybe you feel disconnected from nature too, which would be a really good thing to do to help you reconnect with yourself. I know it's like common advice, but there's something about being able to get outside of your head and really kind of go be active that really kind of helps with healing these types of wounds. But okay, so that's card right there. Next one is we've got this tree with the lights. So how I'm kind of interpreting this card, and I mean, it may mean something different to you as you're looking at it, because there's technically no instructions for what these cards mean. But what I'm kind of feeling is it's something about your growth. So you being able to fully be like this tree where, you know, you've got your roots all seated and then you're slowly growing to the sunlight and becoming your fullest version of yourself. And, you know, once you kind of work through this inner child wound, it's really going to bring out a lot of the growth and help you see it. Like, look at this tree. So as you can kind of see in the video, even though it's a little blurry, at the bottom, you know, there's not that many branches there, but when you kind of get to the top, you see like, oh wow, this tree really has a lot going for it. So even though sometimes maybe your beginning didn't start off with having the most support, that doesn't mean that you can't still get your roots grounded somewhere and grow into the person you're supposed to be. Um, you know, just it's kind of one of those things where you got to keep nurturing, you know, the plant, because sometimes you think it's dead, but really it's not. Maybe it's just not having any branches in that spot, you know, and that's okay. Um, and this inner child wound is kind of preventing you from looking at the sunshine that's right on top of you. You just gotta, you know, spread your little leaves out and absorb all that wonderful sunlight that's sustaining you. So make sure that you, again, pay attention to your roots and where you came from, and make sure you're nurturing these so that way you're grounded whenever you're dealing with these dynamics. Because I feel like even if these people aren't in your life, it's still worth taking the time to reflect within yourself and heal those dynamics with or without their presence. So moving on to the next card. So again, here's another inner part. Here it's that perpetrator victim dynamic where you can see right now there's like that little girl that's hiding behind the chair, and you've got this big boogeyman casting an evil shadow over the situation, and this is really representative of what's kind of going on in your subconscious, of how this fear is really, you know, kind of putting you in this place where you can't feel like you can get out of your situation. Or again, in terms of like relationships, for some of you, you have a tendency to, whenever you think you see that big bad shadow coming, you immediately do this, when sometimes it's literally just the shadow of somebody else, and it's not that big evil scary monster that you saw as a kid, but you see it everywhere that you go, and you immediately hide behind the chair. And so taking time to really reconcile with that past, of being able to listen to the feelings that you have, accepting that that was the situation that happened, and being able to let go of those feelings. I mean, there's lots of different types of techniques, and you know, therapy I think would very well benefit you, um, if you're not already going, to kind of help work out those kind of dynamics. But definitely taking some time to tell that inner child version of you that, hey, I am an adult now, I am safe, and not every shadow is the shadow of like, not every shadow is going to get me. I don't have a monster constantly following me. Maybe you have that paranoia, but it's something that is just an echo from something that happened in childhood. And as an adult, you're able to protect yourself and take care. So, but yeah, so paying attention to these four inner parts would really um, help you be able to kind of get to know yourself a little bit better and get to know this wound dynamic. And so either taking some time to meditate on these images, or just even taking some time to reflect on those different aspects of yourself, would really be useful for healing this inner child wound. So, okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some messages from your inner child, and also some messages from Spirit for advice for healing this wound. So I'm going to start with the messages from your inner child. So let's see here. Anything else? Okay. Any more? Okay. Alright, so we've got 5 cards here. So alright. So for the 5 cards, we've got, I hope I will see you again sometime. I focused on you instead of my pain. I took the easy way out. I don't know what to say. Yes, it is too late. So I think these messages are very dependent on the person that's receiving this message right now, because I have a feeling that for some of you, these cards are about a present relationship or a past relationship that was reflected in the dynamic of your inner child wound. For some of you, I feel it's about letting go of the past. So, for example, again, the I hope I will see you again sometime. I have a feeling that, there's this longing for reconciliation either with your parents or with the person that represents your parents. And that's kind of a hard wound to be able to address whenever you can't get reconciliation with your parents, because of the standpoint that, sometimes, you know, regardless of how much work you do with them or whatever, they're going to remain the way that they are. And so part of that healing process is being able to get that peace within yourself. And I feel like your inner child wound is looking for, you know, peace in this situation. And then I focused on you instead of my pain. Some of you, I feel like addiction is how you're distracting yourself from this inner child pain. Or when I say addiction, I'm not necessarily talking about even drugs or alcohol. You're addicted to spending money, a few of you, relationships. Definitely, there's a couple of you that are watching that really need to understand that being addicted to chasing relationships is a form of addiction, in the terms of you're chasing highs and chasing love that is meant to be, pulled from this original source. And since you didn't have that, you're trying to replicate it in your relationship, for some of you. And then I took the easy way out. Because you've been running from this dynamic for so long, there's been a lot of times where you haven't been able to face it. And you're trying to admit to yourself that this is something that you did. And you don't want to because it hurts. Like, I'm actually sitting here rubbing my eyes because I feel like I'm kind of crying. However, it's true. And this is something you need to forgive yourself for, is that, whenever times got tough and you weren't strong enough, you have to be strong and recognize that you didn't know how to get yourself out of that situation. And you didn't know how to address these feelings. And even if you did, sometimes you just weren't brave enough. And so you're looking for that reconciliation of understanding that, you took the easy way out, admit it, accept it, and then release it. And understand that, that's part of our growth, and that you don't have to be that person anymore. And it'll take some time and some healing, but you